Hey guys, how's it going? DR Modding here. I'm going to give you guys a little tutorial on placing buildings. I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and I just wanted to kind of walk you through it. And I haven't done a tutorial video in a week, so we'll call this the tutorial 102, since this is a pretty common thing that you're going to want to be doing on your maps. I'm not going to get into detail about the terrain editing or foliages, anything like that. You will see me do a little bit of that with this tutorial, but I want to have a video that mainly focuses on that later. So it's going to be kind of a really short rundown of terrain, but I'm going to show you how to bring in a building from another map, and we're actually going to do it for this map. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm actually editing the current version of the UMRV map, and we're getting it ready for the server. And right now, the guy that's going to be playing on this farm, he's asked me to add him another building because he needs some more storage. So we don't really have any room here, so what we're actually going to do is we're going to put in another equipment shed in this grass area down here. So first steps are going to be, obviously, I need to open up the map that I want to place my building in, which we've done. I want to get it open in Giants Editor. Now there are some things that I want to do to get ready for this. So the first step, because I know I'm going to be putting it here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the grass, just so I don't have to deal with it later. Now, you don't have to do this step first, but I tend to do it just to get it out of the way, because sometimes if you don't, right now the grass is really short because it's at it's like stage 1 basically. So as the game progresses, this grass will go to stage 2, 3, 4, and it's going to get taller. And if I forget to get rid of this grass and I put the building down, and maybe the foundation of the building covers this short grass, so I forget about it, then later on when someone's playing the game and this grass starts to grow, it'll start to grow through the floor. So I'm going to just get rid of it so that we know for sure that it's not under the building. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to the top. I'm going to click the terrain foliage paint mode. Looks like a little stick with leaves on it. And you're going to see it's going to bring this red cursor now. Now it's in a circle. You have two options. Over here in your terrain editing window, you have brush type. You can go to square, or you can do round. If for whatever reason your Giants Editor doesn't show this terrain editing window and you want it to, you can come up here to window, click terrain editing, and it's going to bring the window in. Now you can move this around. I always have it down here, but you can move it around and put it wherever you want it to. I'm going to select the square option. It's just easier for me, but you can do either one. And then here's where the settings are for your mouse. So my left mouse button is add, which means it's going to add grass or whatever I select. My middle mouse button is going to replace right now, and that's actually used mostly just for terrain. And then my right mouse button is subtract, which is going to be delete. So now I'm going to scroll down, and we're still in the terrain editing portion, but I'm going to go down here to where it says foliage layer painting. If you open up this drop down, this is all the different foliage layers that I have in this map. Now, if you're using a different map to do this, there might not be as many, or there may be more. But what you're going to want to do is find the foliage layer that you want to delete. So right now, I know we want to delete the grass foliage layer, so I'm going to come up to grass, make sure it's selected, and then I'll go back up here. I've got a square brush. I know that my right mouse button is subtract, and I'll actually get close so you guys can actually see, because it's really short, it's hard to see right now. But if I hit the right mouse button, you're going to see it starts to disappear wherever. I'm actually holding the mouse button down right now, but wherever I select, the grass is going to disappear. Okay, so we can come up here, make the square bigger, and we'll just go ahead and delete a whole area right here, so we know that if you double click the right mouse button, it'll bring up that. Now you want to make sure you're careful when you're working with some foliage layers, like grass for instance will pretty much delete anything crop wise. So like for instance, if I were to click, even though we're on grass, we're not on corn or whatever this is, if I click the right mouse button, it's going to delete that. So you want to be careful with your crops. Now I can just change that by going to undo and get it back. So I'm going to get the grass out of this entire area, give us a nice little surface to work on. Now the other thing I want to do, because this building, I don't want it downhill from the road. I want it to kind of sit up a little higher than the fields. You know, in real life, the water would have to shed away from this, and so I'm going to do it realistically. and I'm going to do some terrain editing here to make my building fit on flat ground. Now obviously I don't necessarily know right now what the size is going to be, but we can fix that later. So to edit the terrain, you're going to want to click on this button, Terrain Sculpt Mode. You're still going to have a square circle cursor, but now it knows to tell the mouse to control the terrain instead of the foliage. Same thing applies with all these. I've got a square brush, I can make it round. If I have add, that's going to increase my elevation. Subtract is going to lower my elevation, and replace is going to actually level my elevation. Now the other thing you can do is to move this box, I didn't tell you that, to make it bigger and smaller. I'm just moving my middle mouse button forward and backwards, and as you can see, this actually moves. So I can come over here and control it with this slider as well. Now it's big, I can bring it down, now it's small. So you can control it here. I like to just control it with these. Now your opacity, your hardness, and your value, that actually controls how much elevation it's going to increase. So if these settings are all low and I were to click the add button, it's very slowly going to bring my terrain up. I'm holding the mouse button down right now, and it's very slowly bringing it up. Now obviously that would take us forever to do this whole area. I'm going to hit undo just to get us back to where we were. Okay, I think that's pretty much flat. So if I increase these sliders, and you don't want to go all the way, and as you learn this, you'll kind of get a hang of where you want this to be. But now watch the difference. If I click the mouse button, we're actually increasing it a ton just by barely hitting the mouse button. So I'm going to get us back to where we're level here. So for what I'm going to be doing, I want it actually kind of low because I don't want it to get out of control, and I'm going to use the replace feature down here. So I want to make sure that my middle mouse button is set to replace, and now this number here under replace, this is going to be this is the elevation of the map, that when I click the middle mouse button, it's going to make the terrain this elevation. Now I can guarantee you this elevation is not going to be what this is. So I'll show you. When I click the middle mouse button, it's actually lowering it because it's trying to find this elevation right here. So I don't want it to be that elevation. We're going to undo that. I want it to actually be the same elevation as my road. So to get this, I just want to make sure my cursor is hovered. See the center, the pole, looking, the white and red pole in the middle of the square? Whatever that's touching is, I want to put that on the elevation of whatever I want it to be. So whatever this is touching, like this is now on the road, I'm going to hit Control. I'm going to hit Control R. My keyboard was in the wrong position. And I don't know if you noticed, but this actually now changed to 86.99. Now, if I hold down the middle mouse button, it's going to flatten this all to that level. It's hard to see on the road because it's already kind of that level, but you're really going to notice it when I come out here into this part of the field where it's actually lower. And I'm just holding the mouse button and kind of dragging it back and forth. And now it's starting to elevate this to the same level as my road. Now, it's doing it rather slowly, so I can move my sliders up a little bit, and it's going to do it quicker. And if I went all the way, it's literally going to just instantly make it that elevation. So we can show you kind of here on the edge. You're going to notice that all I'm going to do is click it once, and it just instantly made it that elevation. Now that's fine when you're doing certain things, but I tend to refrain from doing it on the full setting, unless I'm just doing a wide area like this, and then I'll lower it back down to kind of sculpt the terrain a little bit better on these edges, because I'm going to try to smooth those out so this doesn't look like it's just a perfect square here. Alright, so I want to make sure that I'm giving myself enough room, and I may even come over this way a little bit. just giving myself a nice flat pad to work with. Alright, so now my terrain is set up. I've got the grass removed. Now it's time to bring in our building. So you're going to want to open up either another map, or you can find a building. Say you've got a building that you downloaded from a mod website and you'd like to put it in. On this one, what we're going to actually do is the 100 by 50 shed. This has been released on American Eagles Modding, and I'm going to download it. It's going to be in a zip file. I'm going to unzip that zip file to my desktop, open it up. There's an i3D file, so I can open it up in Giants, and this is what you're going to see. It's kind of like, it's no different than the map, but it's just there's nothing in here but the building. So if I want to bring this over to my map, I'm going to select the machine shed. I want to make sure that everything that I want to bring over is selected. If on your building that you guys chose, if there's multiple transform groups, like let's say maybe the door is in a separate transform group, you're going to want to make sure that they're all selected, each and every one of them. Now I know, just because I've worked with this building many times, that this building is all contained within machine shed 100 by 50, so that's the only one I need to worry about. You don't want to bring your light, you don't want to bring your camera, you don't want to bring those things with you when you do this. So I'm going to make sure that this is highlighted. I'm going to go to File, Export Selection with Files. Now I want to put this in my actual map folder, so I'm going to come up here to my UMRV beta version 2.1, and I talked a little bit about this on our last video, but I've already got a location where I put all of my imports. I call it new models. Some maps you're going to see imports or models. It could be named something different, but I know that in mine it's going to be called this. So I put it in my new models folder. I'm actually going to create a new folder. Oops. I actually need to change that. And I'm just going to call it 100 underscore 50 so that I know what it is. You could do, well, we could do 100 by 50 shed. Okay, so now I've created a folder. I'm going to open that folder, and we'll just call this the same thing, 100 by 50 shed, and this is going to save as an i3D. When this box comes up, you want to hit yes. You want to bring, or you want to get the parent directory. Once that's done, I can go ahead and click out of this one. I don't need it anymore. I'm not going to save it, and I'm going to go back to my map. Now to import it into the map, I'm going to go to File, Import. It's going to automatically bring up the last i3D that we just worked with, but just in case it doesn't, you want to make sure that you're in the same location that you want to be. This has to be in my map folder for it to work, so otherwise it'll come in without textures. So this, when you export this folder, it has to be in your map folder somewhere. But we know that this is it. It's UMRV beta version 2.1. It's in my maps new models folder, 100 by 50 shed. I'm going to click on the i3D, or double click on it, and it's going to automatically bring it in. It takes a little bit to load. It's going to automatically bring it in. Now it didn't come right here where we wanted it to, because it's going to bring it in usually at 000, which is actually going to be under the map. So to get this up here, I talked a little bit about this in the 101 video. You could either sit here and spend all day dragging this into position and trying to get it perfect. It takes a long time. There are some people that do it that way. Or I can hit Control B. As long as that's highlighted, I can hit Control B and click it, and it's going to plop it right on that elevation that I want it to be on. It's going to take a little bit to load, and now my gizmo popped back up. The gizmo is what has the arrows and the rotation, and I'm going to just put this where I want it. I'm going to rotate it, get it into the right position. Now on this particular building, it's actually a little bit bigger than what we than the place that we built for it, the little terrain. So what I'm going to actually have to do is do a little bit more sculpting to get it exactly where I want it. So we're going to slide it over to where it's far enough away from the road that it looks natural, and I'm just going to use the sliders to kind of control the last little bit. the details to get it exactly in the position I want it. I'm going to have it be a little bit out of the ground here so that you have a little bit of a ramp. And now as you can see, the end of my building sticking out over my field. So real quick, we're going to do this easy. I'm going to go back to my foliage brush. I'm going to go down here to foliage layer paint, and because I know that grass deletes this, I could just select grass, but if I know what it is and it's corn, I can select maize, which is obviously what corn is called in this game. I know that my right mouse button is still set at subtract, so it's going to delete it. And let's go ahead and just delete this back a little ways to give us some room. And I'm going to make sure that we do this nice and straight so that the rows don't get messed up. Make sure there's no corn underneath. Now I still have this soil texture here. That's actually a different texture. It's still going to be in your foliage paint button, but it's a different layer. And what it's called is right down here, your terrain detail. So I'm going to click on terrain detail. That's this dirt area. I know that my right mouse button's still on subtract, so I'm going to delete this back to where it's just big enough to get that corn, and then I'm going to just slide it around over here and delete the rest of it. So now I've shrunk that field down a little bit, just making sure I've got all of it. I'm going to go back to my elevation or my terrain editor brush. I know that my settings are still on this level, so if I hit the middle mouse button, we're still going to get that same level we were just on. And I'm just going to extend this a little bit so we have some room to get to the back side of the shed here. And I actually made it a little wider here because I'll put in a little flat spot to park stuff. You could put some grain bins back here, whatnot. Alrighty, so now we've got our terrain done, we've got our building done. Now obviously this doesn't look the greatest because now our terrain, looks like grass, but we don't have any grass coming through, and our slopes here are really steep. It just kind of looks fake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my terrain elevation or terrain sculpt mode is selected. I'm going to go back up here, and instead of replace, I want smooth. Now smooth is going to make these sharp edges, it's going to smoothen them out. Now I'm going to have to actually widen this a little bit to show you. So the sliders, they're set pretty much all the way. If I were to do this right now, you're going to see how much of it's smoothed quite a bit, more than I wanted it to. So we're going to go ahead and undo that. I'm going to lower these down quite a bit. And now when I go to smooth it, see how it's not doing nearly as much? Gives me a little bit more room to work with here. So I'm just going to kind of smooth these slopes down a little bit, make them look more natural so it's not so hard. And it just kind of takes some time and finesse. You got to get it the way you want it. And I'm kind of particular for the details, so I'll sit here and spend quite a bit of time getting the terrain set up the way I want it. But I mean, you could have just left it how we had it and had a nice steep edge there, but I don't like doing that. So I'm going to just kind of smooth this area out, make it more natural. And I'm just holding the mouse button down as I'm just kind of moving the mouse around. It's almost like you're just kind of sculpting this. I'm just holding the mouse button down and dragging the mouse where I want it. Sometimes I kind of go in like a circular pattern. Seems to work the best for me. But see, now I've got this nice gradual slope instead of this big drop off. Makes it look a little more realistic. Just kind of going through, making sure everything's the way I want it. Make sure I get these corners too. Alrighty. So we've got our terrain done. Now I want to paint in some gravel so it doesn't look like it's grass here. To paint the textures on the ground, you're going to want the red mouse or the red pen button, and that's going to be the terrain detail texture paint mode. If I come down here, it says texture layer painting. So terrain texture layer painting. Whatever this box is set to is what it's going to paint in. For me, I know I want gravel. And again, these sliders come into play. The more to the left they are, it'll actually take quite a bit of... I'm clicking the mouse right now and I'm barely getting any gravel textures coming in. If I slide these all the way over, it's just going to instantly paint this square in gravel. So it's going to be really hard. What I like to do is kind of somewhere in between. And I'm actually clicking the mouse button a couple different times. I'm not actually holding it down right now. I'm just clicking until I get the desired effect that I want. Now I'm actually going to add a little bit of a path back here, and again I'm just kind of clicking and dragging it, getting the path that I want here. But I'm going to give them a nice little path back here to this side door and to go all the way around to the back door. Now you're not going to get this perfect. It never works perfectly in Giants Editor. Sometimes you're going to either have too much gravel or not enough gravel. That's just kind of how it works. But you can always cover some of it with some foliage to make it look better. So I'm going to keep coming back here. And I'm going to make sure that it's wide enough that if you were coming back here with a tractor or something, you would actually be able to come around this corner and go in that garage. And even that's kind of tight. And then I said I was going to put a little area here for parking, so what I'm going to do is just give them a little bit of gravel. So some of the grass is kind of still shining through. And just kind of make it look like there's a nice little gravel space there to park on. Now you can make this all the way through. Some people do, but what I like to do is actually I'll leave some grass texture sticking through sometimes to make it look like it's maybe not used very often. And to do that, I can also hit the subtract button and kind of make it a little more transparent. Alright, so now we've got our gravel put down. I might even widen this out a little bit. Alright, I like that. So gravel's in. We want to go ahead and paint our foliage back in here, so we're going to go to the foliage paint mode. I'm going to come down here to grass. Now if you notice, when I go to paint the grass, nothing happens. That's because you have to have the proper channels selected. Now I'll go over this in a different video, because some of these can get pretty complicated on what buttons need to be clicked for what foliage. For grass, you always know that it's going to be 1 and 6, so I just need to click 6, and now it's going to paint grass wherever I come in and paint it. Now I'm doing kind of a sloppy job here, and I do this on purpose. I'm actually going to paint over my roads, and I'm going to paint it right up against the building here. I want to make sure I'm getting all the way down to the edge of my field. And I want to make sure I cover every spot that I deleted it from. Now you don't have to cover everything like I am. You don't have to, cover your roads and whatnot. I just typically do this because it's easier on the next step, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just coming in here and making sure that my grass is painted in. Now I'm going to start subtracting or deleting the grass. So I'm going to come in here with a smaller brush and really make sure I'm getting right where I want to be. And I'll even leave some grass over top the gravel, because eventually when this grows in, it'll look pretty nice. And it'll look like the gravel kind of goes into the grass a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of clean up my road here and delete the grass where I don't want it. And sometimes, you know, this can take a little while depending on what you're doing, but again, I like to be pretty precise, so it takes me a little bit longer than some people. You could definitely do this easier if you were just doing a square, you know, square gravel pad and a square area of grass that's not growing. But I think the little small details are what make these maps look realistic. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave some grass in these areas just to make it look kind of overgrown. Maybe it doesn't get used all the time. I'm just going to kind of delete the grass that is over the gravel areas that are the strongest colors, you know, the area that looks like it has the most gravel. But I'm actually going to leave some of this other grass in here, because as that starts to grow up, it'll kind of make this look like it's overgrown. Alright, now I'm going to come in, and actually we just found a spot that needs to be lowered, so we'll change that here in a second. I'm going to come in and make any grass that's sticking in through a building. I'm just clicking the right mouse button until that little thing, the little piece of grass disappears. Now if I have this set too big and I click it and I'm out here, I'm actually going to delete the grass that's out here. So I want to make sure that I'm just barely getting the edge. And what I'll do is I'll just click and click and click, and I may even start clicking back in here, and as I'm working my way forward, as soon as that last piece disappears, I know that I'm... Sometimes you have to get right up to it. But I'm just going to go all the way around the walls, make sure that I'm getting every piece so I don't have anything sticking through my buildings. And it looks like we got it down pretty good. Alright, so that should be all the grass. Now on this particular building, it actually has a little area here that simulates like an indentation in the concrete for a drain. And so that's where you're seeing the ground texture coming through. So what we're going to need to do is go back to our terrain sculpt mode, and for minor adjustments I really want to make sure this is down low. I don't want to make too much of an adjustment here, and I'm just going to basically tap the subtract button just little bits at a time until I get this down to where I want it, you know, where it basically starts to disappear. Now if you really want this to be precise, you can actually come back through once we get it down below the concrete. We could come back through and go to smooth, so our middle mouse button, and we could kind of smooth the area underneath, and you might start to see some of it pop back through. But I just want to make sure that on the edges of my buildings and out here, this obviously has a concrete pad, so we won't notice it, but I just want to make sure that it didn't go too far. Alright, so now we've got that little area knocked down a little bit, and you'll actually be able to see. I'll come out here and just click on the sky with nothing selected, and that'll deselect the building. But now as you can see, we've got a nice little vein or drain here. Now I didn't go far enough because you can still see the ground texture. So I'm going to come back and get this to disappear all the way until it's gone. And most buildings aren't this detailed, so you're not gonna have to worry about you know, doing this kind of stuff. But this one actually has a trough here for the water to drain out, so that's why we had to go through that extra step. Alright, so we've got all of our grass taken away, we've got our building placed, we've got it level. I might get rid of some of this grass here. Now I can go through, and what I typically do is I'll add some details. So I'm going to keep it on the terrain, or the foliage level layer, sorry. And again, you guys, this is kind of going above what this tutorial is about, but I know that that this Heki one is a bush, and you'll start to kind of figure these out as you go along and you're editing the maps that you guys are working on. You'll kind of figure out what's what. But I'm just going to add some bushes in here just to kind of give it more of a realistic, you know, overgrown look. And sometimes these bushes will come in weird, so you just gotta kind of be picky and place them where you want them. Now I don't want to put it too close to this wall, because like if I put it right up against the wall, it's going to clip through. You're going to see it in here. So I'm going to make sure that I'm putting them far enough back that it might look to the naked eye like it's right up against the building, but you know, make it far enough back that it's not. So I'm just going to kind of add some bushes around here. Maybe add some here. Again, this is just kind of the detailed stuff that ends up later on making the map look more realistic. And there you have it. We've got our building placed, we've got some terrain work done, and some bushes placed here so it looks a little more realistic. Now, on a building like this that has doors and lights, I'm going to have to script those in now. So this building's not ready. If I were to save this and go into the game and zip it back up, load it into my game, I'm going to drive all the way to this building and these doors are not going to work. And that's because I need to make sure that they're scripted, and we'll go over that in a different video. But if this were a building that didn't have doors, you'd be done. And actually, you could delete these doors. You know, a lot of maps, they'll actually just come in, and I'm going to want to make sure I'm selecting the entire transform group. But you could come in here and just delete the door off the building. It's just loading here for a second, and you know, you could save the building like this so you can drive through it, whatnot, if you didn't want to have to worry about the scripting part of it. But I will show you guys in a later video how to script the doors and lights in to make them work and all that. So hopefully that kind of showed you guys how to place buildings. We exported it from a different i3D, we imported it in, and now Nomad, who's going to be using this farm, he now has an extra storage building to help himself store his equipment. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, definitely shoot me a message down below, or you can also shoot me a message at my Facebook page, which I'll share the link for. And as always, I throw my PayPal in there if you guys feeling generous, you want to donate. It goes to the public server that we're going to be getting started here, and it also goes to some models and things that we're going to be getting for you guys to enjoy, some different models that we're going to be putting into some of our maps in the future. So kind of helps us get things going. If you have any questions or comments, definitely shoot me a message. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.